What if I told you that discovering your parents had secretly given away your entire life savings to fund your brother's failing business would become the catalyst for the most important financial awakening of your life? That a single phone call from a stranger would expose a web of financial manipulation spanning 2 decades and ultimately lead you to build the wealth you never thought possible? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Elena Rodriguez, and this is the story of how losing everything I thought I owned taught me the difference between having money and building true financial independence. The morning of April 15th started like any other Tuesday in my carefully structured life. At 28 years old, I had established what I believed was a solid foundation for my future. My apartment in downtown Portland was modest but comfortable, reflecting the practical approach to money management I had learned from my parents. Every piece of furniture represented careful consideration between quality and cost. Every monthly expense was tracked in spreadsheets that would have impressed any certified public accountant. I worked as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized technology consulting firm, earning a respectable salary of $68,000 annually. The position provided health insurance, retirement matching, and the professional stability my mother had always emphasized as the cornerstone of financial security. While the work was not particularly exciting, it offered predictable income and advancement opportunities that aligned with the conservative financial philosophy I had inherited from my family. My savings account contained what I considered an impressive $47,000, accumulated through years of disciplined spending habits and automatic transfers from each paycheck. This money represented more than emergency fund security. It was the foundation for my planned real estate purchase, the down payment that would transform me from renter to homeowner and mark my official entry into the middle-class lifestyle my parents had worked so hard to achieve. The relationship with my family appeared strong and supportive on the surface. My parents, Maria and Carlos Rodriguez, had immigrated from El Salvador 35 years earlier with nothing but determination and an unwavering commitment to creating opportunities for their children that they had never experienced themselves. They owned a small grocery store in the Woodstock neighborhood, serving the Latino community with authentic products and personalized service that the larger chains could not match. My older brother Miguel had always been the entrepreneurial spirit of the family, constantly developing new business ideas and pursuing ventures that promised to revolutionize whatever industry had captured his attention. His enthusiasm was infectious, and his ability to articulate compelling visions for success had impressed family members and potential investors throughout his adult life. At 32 years old, he possessed the confidence and charisma that made people believe in his capabilities, even when previous projects had failed to achieve projected outcomes. The most recent venture was Sabor Auténtico, an upscale Mexican restaurant and catering company that Miguel had launched 18 months earlier, with ambitious plans to expand throughout the Pacific Northwest. The concept was sophisticated, featuring authentic regional cuisine prepared with locally sourced ingredients and presented in an atmosphere that honored traditional Mexican culture while appealing to contemporary dining preferences. From the outside, Miguel's business appeared to be performing well. The restaurant occupied an attractive location in the Pearl District, with professional signage and interior design that suggested success and profitability. When family gatherings included discussions about business performance, Miguel would describe positive customer feedback, catering contracts with corporate clients, and expansion opportunities that indicated strong growth potential. I had provided some initial financial support for Sabor Auténtico, contributing $5,000 from my savings when Miguel first presented the business plan. The investment felt appropriate given my belief in his abilities and the detailed financial projections he had prepared. However, I had established clear boundaries about additional funding, explaining that my savings were designated for specific personal financial goals that required protection. My relationship with money had been shaped by childhood experiences of financial uncertainty and the values my parents had instilled through their example of hard work and careful resource management. I remembered the stress in my mother's voice when unexpected expenses arose, the way my father would calculate and recalculate household budgets to ensure bills could be paid on time. These memories created deep respect for financial stability and strong motivation to build security through traditional saving and investment strategies. The approach to personal finance that I had developed reflected this conservative foundation. I maintained detailed records of income and expenses, tracked progress toward savings goals with mathematical precision, and avoided unnecessary risks that might jeopardize the financial security I had worked so hard to establish. My investment strategy was conservative, focused on index funds and certificates of deposit that provided steady returns without exposing my capital to significant volatility. This methodical approach to money management had provided psychological comfort and measurable progress toward my objectives. Each month, when I reviewed my financial statements, I could see evidence that my disciplined habits were producing the results I had planned. The savings account balance grew consistently, the retirement contributions were accumulating compound returns, and my overall financial position was strengthening according to the timeline I had established. The apartment I rented in the Hawthorne district reflected these values and priorities. The space was affordable but pleasant, located in a neighborhood that offered convenience and community without the premium costs associated with more trendy areas of the city. I had furnished it carefully with a combination of new purchases and inherited pieces from family members, creating an environment that was comfortable without being extravagant. My social life revolved around activities that aligned with my financial goals and values. I enjoyed cooking meals at home rather than dining out frequently, exploring Portland's extensive network of hiking trails and public parks, and attending cultural events that were free or reasonably priced. These choices provided satisfaction and entertainment while supporting my commitment to saving money for future objectives. The professional environment at my workplace was collaborative and supportive, with colleagues who shared similar backgrounds and financial circumstances. We often discussed strategies for managing student loans, saving for major purchases, and navigating the challenges of building careers in a competitive economy. These conversations reinforced my confidence that the approach I had adopted was appropriate and effective for someone in my situation. My immediate supervisor, Jennifer Walsh, had become something of a mentor in both professional and personal development. She had successfully advanced within the company over 7 years, purchasing a home and building investment portfolios that provided examples of what was possible through consistent effort and intelligent planning. Her advice about career advancement and financial management had influenced many of the decisions I had made about my own trajectory. The relationship with my parents remained close and supportive, with regular family dinners and involvement in significant decisions about career and personal life. They had expressed pride in my educational achievements and professional progress, often citing my stability and responsibility as examples for other family members to emulate. Their approval meant a great deal to me, representing validation that I was honoring the sacrifices they had made to provide opportunities for my success. Miguel's relationship with the family was more complex but equally important to the overall family dynamic. His entrepreneurial ventures provided excitement and optimism about the potential for extraordinary success, while my conservative approach provided stability and security that balanced the higher-risk elements of his business activities. Together, we represented different but complementary approaches to building financial success and achieving the American dream our parents had pursued. The morning routine I had established supported both my professional responsibilities and personal financial management objectives. I would wake at 6:30 each day, prepare coffee and breakfast at home to avoid unnecessary expenses, review my financial accounts online to monitor progress and identify any issues requiring attention, and plan the day's activities with attention to both productivity and cost management. This particular Tuesday morning included checking my savings account balance as part of the weekly review process I had implemented to track progress toward my home purchase goal. The login process was automatic, requiring only my username and password to access the account information I reviewed regularly. The familiar interface loaded quickly, displaying account balances and recent transaction history that typically showed automated deposits and occasional transfers to checking account for monthly expenses. However, the information that appeared on my computer screen was completely unexpected and initially incomprehensible. Instead of the $47,000 balance I anticipated finding, the account showed a current balance of $312.73. My immediate assumption was that a technical error had occurred, either with the bank's computer systems or my internet connection, creating a display problem that would resolve itself with a simple page refresh. The refreshed page displayed identical information, showing the same impossible balance that represented less than 1% of the money I knew should be in the account. My heart rate increased as I began considering explanations for what appeared to be a catastrophic financial emergency. Identity theft was the most likely scenario, suggesting that criminals had gained access to my account information and systematically withdrawn my savings through fraudulent transactions. The transaction history provided the key to understanding what had actually occurred. Rather than showing evidence of unauthorized access by external criminals, the records displayed a series of legitimate transfers that had been initiated using proper account credentials and authorization procedures. Over the course of 6 weeks, my savings had been systematically transferred to accounts that belonged to other members of my family, with the largest transactions going directly to business accounts associated with Sabor Auténtico. The dates and amounts created a timeline that corresponded with conversations I remembered having with my parents about Miguel's restaurant and the challenges he was facing with cash flow and supplier relationships. At the time, these discussions had seemed like general family updates about business performance. In retrospect, they represented preparation for financial decisions that had been made without my knowledge or consent, using access to my accounts that I had never authorized. The realization that my own family had systematically transferred my life savings to fund business operations that I had specifically declined to support created a combination of shock, betrayal, and panic that I had never experienced before. This was not a case of external fraud or criminal activity that could be reported to authorities and potentially resolved through insurance or bank protection policies. This was deliberate financial manipulation by people I trusted most, using my money for purposes I had explicitly rejected. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The immediate practical implications were overwhelming. Without my savings, I could not proceed with the home purchase I had planned for the following month. The down payment money was gone, along with the closing costs and emergency reserves that responsible homeownership required. My financial security, built through years of careful planning and disciplined saving, had been eliminated through decisions I had not participated in or approved. The emotional impact was equally devastating. The trust that formed the foundation of my relationships with my parents and brother had been shattered through their willingness to prioritize Miguel's business needs over my financial security and autonomy. The values they had taught me about honesty, respect, and family loyalty appeared to apply only when convenient, discarded when more immediate concerns required different priorities. As I sat staring at the computer screen that displayed the destruction of my financial foundation, I had no idea that this moment would mark the beginning of the most important education about money, family, and personal power that I would ever receive. The phone call that would change everything was still hours away. The physical manifestation of betrayal begins as a hollowing sensation in your chest, as though someone has reached inside and extracted something vital to your functioning. Your mind struggles to reconcile information that fundamentally contradicts your understanding of the people who shaped your values and worldview. The cardiovascular system responds with irregular rhythms, uncertain whether to prepare for confrontation or retreat when the threat originates from those who taught you about trust and family loyalty. I remained motionless at my computer for precisely 17 minutes, tracking the time through my phone's display while staring at account information that represented the systematic destruction of my financial foundation. The numbers persisted despite repeated page refreshes, and my desperate hope that technical errors or system malfunctions might explain what appeared to be an impossible situation. The balance of $312.73 was not the result of banking mistakes, but the deliberate outcome of unauthorized transfers executed with credentials I had never shared with any family member. The transaction history revealed a calculated pattern that I had been too trusting to recognize during its implementation. The initial transfer of $8,000 had occurred on February 28th, corresponding with a family gathering where Miguel had mentioned cash flow challenges affecting supplier relationships for his restaurant operation. I recalled my father posing seemingly casual questions about my banking procedures and account management, which I had interpreted as parental interest in my financial progress, rather than intelligence gathering for unauthorized access to my resources. The subsequent transfers demonstrated sophisticated coordination and strategic timing that ensured detection would be delayed until the theft was substantially complete. Transfer amounts varied between $3,000 and $12,000, scheduled at intervals that coincided with periods when my attention was focused on demanding work projects or personal activities that reduced my likelihood of conducting thorough account reviews during the theft's execution. The largest single transfer of $15,000 had been processed on March 15th, the same date Miguel had contacted me to express gratitude for my supportive nature as a sister and to share optimistic news about securing a significant catering contract with a prominent corporate client. His enthusiasm and appreciation had seemed genuine and heartwarming during our conversation, creating positive emotions that prevented the careful account scrutiny that might have revealed the ongoing exploitation of my savings. The recognition that my family had systematically exploited my love and trust for criminal purposes created emotional trauma that exceeded any previous experience in my adult life. This was not the consequence of poor judgment or unfortunate circumstances that could provide learning opportunities for future decision-making. This represented deliberate exploitation by individuals who had established my moral framework and taught me to prioritize honesty and integrity above personal advantage or convenience. My hands trembled as I printed comprehensive documentation of the unauthorized transfers, creating physical evidence of crimes committed against me by my closest relatives. The printed statements felt surreal, resembling artifacts from another person's experience rather than proof of financial abuse perpetrated by people who had raised me to value family unity and mutual support above individual interests or material concerns. Each printed page represented months of disciplined saving and careful budgeting that had been redirected to business purposes I had explicitly declined to support through voluntary contributions. The documentation revealed not just financial theft but philosophical betrayal, representing the complete collapse of the ethical framework that had guided my decisions throughout my professional and personal development. The immediate practical implications extended far beyond the missing money to encompass comprehensive disruption of my financial strategy and life planning. My scheduled home purchase required a down payment of $35,000 that no longer existed, and the earnest money already provided would be forfeited if I could not complete the transaction as contracted. The failed purchase would damage my credit rating and eliminate favorable financing terms that had been secured through months of application processes and financial documentation. More significantly, my entire approach to financial management had been constructed on the foundation of accumulated savings that provided security, flexibility, and independence for major life decisions. Without that foundation, I could not manage unexpected expenses, pursue investment opportunities, or maintain the autonomy that had enabled confident pursuit of professional and personal objectives, without relying on family assistance or external financial support. The workday that followed represented the most challenging professional experience of my career to that point. I attempted to maintain focus on routine marketing responsibilities, while my thoughts continuously returned to the financial catastrophe that had occurred in my personal life. Colleagues observed my distraction and expressed concern about my well-being, but I could not explain the situation without revealing family dynamics that seemed too complex and shameful for workplace discussion. Jennifer Walsh, my supervisor and professional mentor, suggested lunch after noting my unusual behavior during morning team meetings. Her concern reflected the supportive relationship we had developed through 2 years of collaborative work, but when she inquired directly about my obvious distress, I found myself unable to articulate the situation without appearing to suffer from severe psychological problems or delusional thinking patterns. The conversation proved awkward and unsatisfying for both participants. I appreciated Jennifer's willingness to provide support and guidance, but I could not supply sufficient information to enable relevant advice or actionable recommendations. When she suggested that financial stress was common among young professionals and could be addressed through budgeting assistance or debt counseling services, I nodded agreement while understanding that conventional financial guidance was inadequate for addressing theft perpetrated by trusted family members. Returning home that evening required emotional reserves I did not possess. The apartment that had previously represented progress and stability now felt like evidence of my naive judgment and inadequate protective instincts. Every furnishing and decoration represented resources I had allocated to comfort rather than additional savings that might have provided cushion against family exploitation. The environment that had once offered comfort now served as a reminder of my vulnerability and failure to anticipate the potential for family financial abuse. The telephone conversation I recognized as necessary with my parents required preparation I was uncertain how to complete effectively. Confronting individuals who had fundamentally violated your trust involves communication challenges not addressed in standard etiquette guides or professional development training. I lacked templates for discussing theft and betrayal with people who had established my understanding that family loyalty represented the highest moral obligation, and that financial matters should remain private within family boundaries. My mother answered with characteristic warmth and enthusiasm, immediately launching into detailed updates about neighborhood activities and preliminary planning for Miguel's birthday celebration scheduled for the following weekend. Her casual demeanor and normal conversational patterns created cognitive dissonance that intensified the difficulty of the conversation beyond my expectations. She behaved like someone with no reason to anticipate conflict or challenging questions, despite having participated in the systematic theft of my entire life savings. When I interrupted her cheerful monologue to mention discovering irregularities in my bank account, her response was immediate and revealing. Rather than expressing surprise or concern about potential fraud, she became defensive and evasive, suggesting that I might have made record-keeping errors, or that banking mistakes were common and typically resolved quickly through customer service contact. Her reaction confirmed her complete awareness of the unauthorized transfers and revealed preparation of explanations for this exact conversation. The confrontation that ensued differed fundamentally from any previous interaction with either parent throughout my adult life. When I presented specific details about the unauthorized transfers and demanded explanations for how my resources had been accessed without permission, my mother's defensiveness transformed into righteous indignation about my lack of family loyalty and failure to prioritize Miguel's business success over individual financial objectives. According to her perspective, the money had been borrowed rather than stolen, and my negative reaction demonstrated selfishness and ingratitude for the sacrifices my parents had made throughout my childhood and educational development. Miguel's restaurant was experiencing difficulties through circumstances beyond his control, and family members had obligations to provide assistance during temporary challenges. My savings account was characterized as excessive accumulation that served no productive purpose, while my brother's business could utilize those resources to create employment opportunities and serve community needs. The conversation revealed that my parents had never recognized my savings as legitimately belonging to me, despite the fact that every dollar had been earned through my individual employment and deposited through my personal banking activities. In their understanding, family resources should be allocated according to need and opportunity rather than individual ownership and autonomous decision-making authority. My refusal to voluntarily provide additional funding for Sabor Autentico had been interpreted as betrayal that justified accessing the money without my knowledge or consent. My father eventually participated in the conversation, adopting a more business-oriented approach that remained equally unapologetic about their actions. He explained that Miguel's restaurant was positioned for significant success and that my money had been invested rather than lost or misappropriated. When the business achieved projected profitability, I would receive repayment with interest rates that exceeded conventional savings account returns. The temporary utilization of my funds was described as a family investment strategy that would ultimately benefit all participants. When I demanded immediate return of my money, both parents became frustrated and accusatory about my priorities and values. They emphasized that I maintained comfortable living standards without requiring access to savings for daily expenses, while Miguel faced immediate bankruptcy and potential loss of everything he had invested in business development. My focus on individual financial security was portrayed as evidence of values incompatible with family loyalty and cultural traditions that emphasized community support over personal accumulation. The conversation concluded without resolution when I insisted that my money be returned within 24 hours, and my parents refused to acknowledge having committed theft or that I possessed legal rights to funds that had been transferred from my accounts. Their final position was that I should demonstrate gratitude for the opportunity to support Miguel's business and exercise patience with the repayment timeline that would occur when the restaurant achieved sustainable profitability. After ending the phone call, I experienced isolation and vulnerability that exceeded anything I had previously imagined possible. The people who had taught me about right and wrong, honesty and integrity, financial responsibility and family values, had systematically violated every principle they had claimed to represent. My fundamental understanding of relationships, trust, and moral behavior had been undermined by their actions and their complete absence of remorse or accountability for criminal behavior. The night that followed was the longest of my adult life. Sleep was impossible because my mind continuously processed memories of family interactions that I now recognized as manipulation and preparation for financial exploitation. Conversations that had seemed like expressions of interest and affection were revealed as intelligence gathering for criminal activity. Gifts and demonstrations of support were recontextualized as strategies for maintaining access to my resources while preventing protective action. I recognized that my approach to family relationships had been based on assumptions about honesty and mutual respect that were not shared by other family members. While I had operated according to principles of individual autonomy and personal responsibility, they had functioned within a framework that prioritized collective family interests over individual rights and informed consent. The disconnect was not merely financial but philosophical, representing fundamental differences in values and ethics that I had never recognized or addressed. The following morning brought practical necessity of developing strategies for recovering my money and protecting myself from additional exploitation. This required acknowledging that I was dealing with individuals who had committed crimes against me while sharing genetic relationships, and that conventional approaches to family conflict resolution were inadequate for addressing deliberate theft and fraud committed by people with access to my personal information and financial accounts. The third day after discovering the theft marked the beginning of what would become the most transformative period of my life, though I could not have imagined this outcome while sitting in my kitchen at 7:30 in the morning, surrounded by printed bank statements and legal research I had conducted through sleepless nights. The coffee had grown cold in my cup as I stared at documentation that proved my family had systematically stolen nearly $50,000, yet provided no clear pathway for recovery or justice. My professional responsibilities demanded attention, despite the personal crisis consuming my thoughts and energy. The marketing campaign I was managing for our technology consulting firm required final approval from clients, and my supervisor Jennifer had scheduled a performance review that could not be postponed without raising questions about my competence and commitment. The necessity of maintaining normal workplace behavior while processing devastating personal betrayal created psychological strain that manifested in physical symptoms of exhaustion and anxiety. The performance review proceeded better than expected, with Jennifer praising my creativity and attention to detail on recent projects. However, her concluding comments introduced an element that would prove more significant than either of us anticipated at the time. She mentioned that our firm had recently contracted with a financial planning consultant to provide employee education sessions about retirement planning, investment strategies, and personal wealth building that complemented our existing benefits package. The consultant was described as someone with extensive experience, helping professionals navigate complex financial decisions and develop long-term strategies for building security and independence. Jennifer suggested that I might benefit from scheduling an individual consultation, given my apparent interest in financial planning that she had observed through our previous conversations about career development and personal goals. Under normal circumstances, I would have politely declined such an offer, confident that my self-directed approach to money management was adequate for my needs and objectives. However, the recent destruction of my financial foundation had created awareness that my knowledge and protective strategies were insufficient for the challenges I now faced. The conventional wisdom about saving and budgeting had not prepared me for theft by family members, or the legal complexities of recovering stolen funds from people who had access to my personal information. Jennifer provided contact information for the financial consultant, explaining that the firm was covering the cost of individual sessions as part of their professional development benefit program. The consultant's name was David Chen, and his credentials included certifications in financial planning, investment management, and estate planning that suggested comprehensive expertise in areas where I desperately needed guidance and support. The decision to schedule a consultation felt simultaneously rational and terrifying. Discussing my financial situation with a professional would require acknowledging the full extent of my family's betrayal and my own naivete about protecting my resources from people I had trusted completely. The conversation would necessitate admitting that my careful planning and disciplined saving habits had been inadequate preparation for the realities of financial abuse and exploitation. However, the alternative was continuing to struggle with legal and practical challenges that exceeded my knowledge and capabilities. The research I had conducted about recovering stolen funds suggested that successful resolution required professional assistance from people with experience in financial crimes and family law. My attempts to understand complex legal procedures and documentation requirements had revealed the limitations of self-directed problem-solving for situations of this magnitude. The phone call to David Chen's office was answered by a professional assistant who scheduled the appointment with efficiency and courtesy that suggested a well-organized practice focused on client service. The consultation was arranged for the following Thursday afternoon at their downtown Portland office, with instructions to bring recent financial statements and documentation related to my specific concerns and objectives. Preparing for the consultation required gathering evidence of my family's theft and organizing the information in ways that would enable productive discussion about recovery options and protective strategies. This process involved reviewing months of account statements, documenting the timeline of unauthorized transfers, and researching the business registration and financial status of my brother's restaurant to understand where my money had actually been used. The investigation revealed that Sabor Autentico was in far worse financial condition than Miguel had represented to our family. Public records showed multiple tax liens, unpaid vendor accounts, and lease disputes that indicated systematic financial mismanagement rather than temporary cash flow challenges caused by external factors. The restaurant had never achieved the profitability that would have enabled repayment of the money taken from my accounts, and the business appeared to be approaching bankruptcy despite the substantial capital injection my savings had provided. This discovery transformed my understanding of the theft from a misguided family investment strategy to a deliberate scheme to use my money to delay the inevitable failure of a business that had been doomed by poor management and unrealistic financial projections. My parents and brother had not borrowed my savings to help a successful business through temporary difficulties. They had stolen my money to postpone acknowledging that Miguel's entrepreneurial venture had failed, and that their faith in his business capabilities had been misplaced. The emotional impact of this revelation was complex and profound. Part of me felt vindicated that my instinctive reluctance to provide additional funding for the restaurant had been based on accurate assessment of its viability and management. However, a larger part of me felt devastated that my family had been willing to sacrifice my financial security to avoid confronting Miguel's failures and their own poor judgment about supporting his business ventures. The week leading up to the consultation with David Chen was marked by increasing anxiety about exposing my situation to a stranger who might judge my family dynamics or question my own decision-making that had enabled the theft to occur. Professional financial advisors presumably worked with clients who had normal family relationships and conventional financial challenges, not people whose relatives had committed elaborate fraud against them. My imagination created scenarios where the consultant would express disbelief about my claims, suggest that I had somehow authorized the transfers and forgotten about them, or recommend family counseling rather than legal action to recover stolen funds. The possibility of encountering skepticism or inappropriate advice from someone I was paying for professional guidance added another layer of stress to an already overwhelming situation. However, research about David Chen's background and client testimonials suggested a practitioner with experience addressing complex financial situations that involved relationship dynamics and unconventional challenges. His website included case studies about helping clients recover from financial abuse, navigate family business disputes, and rebuild wealth after experiencing major losses through various circumstances. The information provided reassurance that my situation, while personally unprecedented, was not professionally unusual for someone with his expertise. The office building where the consultation was scheduled was located in the financial district, surrounded by banks and investment firms that represented the type of financial services I had never imagined needing. The directory in the lobby listed David Chen's practice among other professional services that specialized in wealth management, estate planning, and business consulting for individuals and families with complex financial needs and objectives. The elevator ride to the 15th floor provided time for final preparation and mental rehearsal of how I would present my situation without becoming emotional or losing focus on the practical assistance I needed. The challenge was communicating the facts clearly while acknowledging the emotional impact without allowing my feelings about the betrayal to overwhelm the professional nature of the consultation. The reception area was designed to convey competence and stability through conservative furnishings and decorations, that suggested attention to detail and respect for client confidentiality. The assistant who greeted me was professional and welcoming, offering coffee and confirming that David Chen was available for our scheduled appointment. The environment felt safe and structured, providing psychological comfort that supported my decision to seek professional help rather than continuing to handle the crisis independently. David Chen appeared precisely at the scheduled time, extending his hand with a confident handshake and direct eye contact that suggested someone comfortable with difficult conversations and complex problems. His appearance was professional but approachable, conveying expertise without intimidation. His initial greeting included appreciation for my willingness to seek consultation and assurance that our discussion would remain completely confidential, regardless of what decisions I made about ongoing professional services. The office where our consultation took place was furnished with comfortable seating arranged to facilitate conversation rather than formal presentation. The walls displayed credentials and awards that documented his education and professional achievements, but the overall atmosphere was more conversational than corporate. The setup suggested someone who understood that financial planning was ultimately about human relationships and personal values, rather than purely mathematical calculations. His opening questions were broad and non-directive, allowing me to describe my situation in my own terms, rather than responding to specific inquiries about predetermined categories of financial planning services. This approach immediately distinguished his consultation style from the rigid questionnaires and standardized assessments I had anticipated based on my limited experience with financial service providers. When I began explaining the discovery of unauthorized transfers from my savings account, David Chen's expression remained neutral and professional, showing no surprise or disbelief about the circumstances I described. His note-taking was methodical and thorough, indicating that he was treating my account as factual information requiring careful documentation rather than claims that needed verification or skeptical evaluation. His first substantive response addressed the emotional impact of family financial abuse, while simultaneously focusing attention on practical recovery strategies and protective measures. He acknowledged that theft by family members created unique psychological and legal challenges that required different approaches than conventional financial crimes committed by strangers. His familiarity with these dynamics provided immediate reassurance that my situation was neither unprecedented nor unresolvable. The questions he posed about my family's access to my account information and the timeline of the transfers demonstrated expertise in financial fraud investigation that exceeded anything I had expected from a consultation that I had initially viewed as general financial planning advice. His analysis of the transaction patterns revealed sophistication in understanding how family financial abuse typically develops and the strategies that perpetrators use to avoid detection and accountability. Most importantly, his approach to discussing recovery options was both realistic and empowering, presenting concrete steps I could take to protect my remaining assets while pursuing legal remedies for recovering stolen funds. Unlike the helplessness I had experienced during my independent research, the consultation was providing actionable strategies that addressed both immediate protection needs and long-term financial rebuilding objectives. As the initial phase of our conversation concluded, I realized that this meeting represented far more than professional advice about financial planning. David Chen was introducing me to ways of thinking about money, family relationships, and personal power that would fundamentally change my approach to building wealth and protecting my interests. The catalyst for transformation that I had desperately needed had arrived in the form of expertise and perspective that I could never have developed independently. The conversation that would follow would prove even more significant than this promising beginning, as David Chen prepared to share insights about financial independence and family dynamics that would reshape my understanding of what it meant to build genuine security and success. The phone call that would change everything was about to begin in earnest. The moment David Chen opened the folder containing my financial documents and began his systematic review of the evidence, I understood that I was witnessing a professional approach to problem solving that differed fundamentally from any strategy I had previously considered. His examination was methodical and thorough, moving through bank statements with the precision of someone who understood both the technical aspects of financial fraud and the emotional complexity of family betrayal. His initial assessment focused on establishing the timeline and pattern of unauthorized transfers, creating a visual representation that revealed the sophisticated nature of my family's theft. Using a whiteboard in his office, he mapped each transaction against corresponding dates when I had reported family conversations or social interactions, demonstrating how my parents had coordinated their access to my accounts with information gathering that had seemed like normal parental interest in my financial progress. The analysis revealed that my family had been planning this exploitation for at least 4 months before implementing the first transfer. The pattern of their questions about my banking habits, account balances, and financial goals had provided intelligence that enabled them to time their theft to avoid detection during my regular account reviews. Their understanding of my personal routines and professional schedule had allowed them to execute transfers when I was least likely to notice immediate account changes. David Chen's explanation of these dynamics introduced me to concepts about financial abuse that I had never encountered in conventional personal finance education. According to his professional experience, family financial crimes typically involved systematic preparation and psychological manipulation that extended far beyond simple theft of money. The perpetrators worked to maintain their victims' trust and emotional dependency while creating justifications for their actions that exploited cultural values and family obligations. In my case, the exploitation had been particularly sophisticated because my parents had used my own financial responsibility and family loyalty against me. They had encouraged my savings habits while secretly preparing to access those savings for purposes I had explicitly declined to support. They had praised my independence and maturity while simultaneously planning to violate my autonomy in the most fundamental way possible by stealing the resources that enabled my self-sufficiency. The conversation shifted to immediate protective measures that would prevent additional exploitation while we developed longer-term recovery strategies. David Chen recommended immediate changes to all my financial accounts, including new account numbers, enhanced security protocols, and removal of any family members who might have been granted access through previous arrangements or inherited permissions from joint accounts during my college years. His approach to these protective measures was both practical and educational, explaining how financial predators typically maintained access to their victims, resources, and the specific steps required to eliminate those vulnerabilities completely. The process was more complex than simply changing passwords or closing accounts, because family members often possessed personal information that could be used to circumvent conventional security measures through social engineering tactics with bank personnel. The most revealing aspect of our initial consultation involved David Chen's questions about my long-term financial goals and the relationship between my money management strategies and my family dynamics. His inquiries helped me recognize that my approach to saving and financial planning had been unconsciously designed to gain approval from parents who had ultimately viewed my resources as available for their own purposes, rather than evidence of my individual achievement and autonomy. His analysis suggested that my conservative investment strategy and emphasis on liquid savings had been influenced by family messages about the importance of accessible funds during emergencies, without recognizing that my own family represented the most significant threat to my financial security. The very characteristics that had made me a responsible saver had also made me vulnerable to exploitation by people who understood my habits and motivations better than I understood their intentions. This insight initiated a fundamental shift in my thinking about the relationship between family loyalty and personal financial protection. David Chen explained that healthy family relationships included respect for individual financial boundaries and decision-making autonomy, while unhealthy family dynamics often involved financial enmeshment and exploitation disguised as mutual support and shared resources. The distinction was particularly relevant for individuals from immigrant families or cultural backgrounds that emphasized collective responsibility over individual rights, because these values could be manipulated by family members who prioritized their own financial needs over the well-being and autonomy of relatives who had achieved greater economic success through education and professional development. His questions about my brother's business and my parents' involvement in financing Sabora Tentico revealed additional layers of financial dysfunction that extended far beyond the theft of my savings. According to public records that David Chen had accessed through professional databases, my parents had also mortgaged their own home to provide capital for Miguel's restaurant, creating a financial crisis that threatened their retirement security and long-term housing stability. The pattern suggested that my family's financial problems were systemic rather than temporary, involving poor judgment about business investments and unrealistic expectations about Miguel's entrepreneurial capabilities. My savings had been stolen not to provide temporary support for a viable business during challenging economic conditions, but to delay the collapse of a venture that had been poorly conceived and inadequately managed from its inception. This revelation transformed my understanding of the situation, from a family disagreement about resource allocation to a financial emergency that threatened multiple generations of our family's economic stability. My parents had risked their own retirement security to support Miguel's business failure, and when those resources proved inadequate, they had stolen my money to avoid confronting the reality that their investment had been fundamentally flawed. David Chen's expertise in family financial dynamics enabled him to predict with remarkable accuracy how my parents would respond to demands for repayment of stolen funds. According to his professional experience, families who committed financial crimes against their own members typically escalated their justifications and manipulative tactics when confronted with evidence of their wrongdoing, rather than acknowledging responsibility and working toward restitution. Pex and Workusperi. His prediction proved accurate when he recommended that I send a formal written demand for immediate repayment of all stolen funds, accompanied by documentation of the unauthorized transfers and a deadline for compliance before legal action would be initiated. The letter was crafted to communicate seriousness and legal awareness while providing my parents with an opportunity to resolve the matter privately without involving law enforcement or civil litigation. Their response arrived within 48 hours and exceeded even David Chen's pessimistic expectations about their willingness to accept responsibility for their actions. Instead of acknowledging the theft or proposing repayment arrangements, my parents accused me of betraying family values and threatened to cut off all communication if I continued pursuing recovery of money they claimed had been freely given to support Miguel's business success. The letter included detailed accusations about my selfishness and cultural disloyalty, suggesting that my pursuit of individual financial goals represented abandonment of the family unity and mutual support that had enabled my educational and professional achievements. They portrayed my demand for repayment as evidence that I had been corrupted by American individualism and forgotten the sacrifices they had made throughout my childhood to provide opportunities for my success. Most significantly, their response included explicit threats about the social and emotional consequences of pursuing legal action against family members, warning that such behavior would result in permanent estrangement from parents, extended family, and community members, who would view my actions as unforgivable violations of cultural expectations about family loyalty and respect for parental authority. David Chen's analysis of this response revealed sophisticated manipulation tactics that combined emotional blackmail with cultural guilt to prevent victims from seeking justice for financial crimes committed by their own families. According to his professional experience, these tactics were often effective in preventing legal action because victims prioritized maintaining family relationships over recovering stolen money, even when the theft had caused significant financial hardship and emotional trauma. However, his approach to addressing these manipulative tactics was both practical and empowering, helping me understand that healthy family relationships required mutual respect and ethical behavior from all parties, and that accepting financial abuse to maintain artificial harmony was ultimately destructive for everyone involved, including the perpetrators who needed consequences to motivate behavioral change. The consultation concluded with development of a comprehensive strategy that addressed both immediate recovery objectives and long-term financial rebuilding goals that would provide protection against future exploitation while creating opportunities for building wealth and security that exceeded what I had previously achieved through conventional saving and investment approaches. The strategy included legal action to recover stolen funds through civil litigation that would create official documentation of the theft and establish legal precedent for protecting my future assets from family interference. Simultaneously, we would implement advanced asset protection strategies that would shield my resources from potential creditors or family members who might attempt additional exploitation through various legal or fraudulent means. Most importantly, David Chen introduced me to investment and wealth-building strategies that would enable me to rebuild my financial foundation more quickly and securely than the conservative savings approach I had previously employed. His expertise in financial planning extended far beyond crisis management to encompass sophisticated strategies for building generational wealth and achieving financial independence through diversified investment portfolios and entrepreneurial opportunities. The educational component of our relationship proved as valuable as the practical assistance with recovering stolen funds. David Chen provided resources about financial literacy, investment theory, and wealth psychology that addressed gaps in my knowledge about building and protecting significant assets over long-term time horizons. His approach to financial education emphasized understanding the psychological and emotional factors that influenced money management decisions, helping me recognize how my family background and cultural conditioning had created both strengths and vulnerabilities in my relationship with money and financial planning. The most transformative aspect of our initial consultation involved recognizing that the theft of my savings, while devastating in the short term, provided an opportunity to fundamentally improve my approach to building wealth and protecting my interests from various forms of exploitation and financial risk. David Chen's perspective reframed my crisis as a catalyst for developing financial sophistication and independence that would ultimately provide greater security and opportunities than I could have achieved through continuing the conservative strategies that had made me vulnerable to family exploitation in the first place. As our first formal consultation concluded, I understood that I had gained far more than professional assistance with recovering stolen money. I had been introduced to ways of thinking about wealth, family relationships, and personal power that would guide my decisions and strategies for the remainder of my financial life. The foundation for transformation had been established through expertise and perspective that I could never have developed independently. The real work of rebuilding and protecting my financial future was about to begin under professional guidance that would prove more valuable than any amount of money my family could have stolen or returned. The week following my initial consultation with David Chen presented an unexpected psychological challenge that I had not anticipated when I first sought professional assistance for recovering my stolen savings. While his analysis had provided clarity about the scope of my family's financial crimes and practical strategies for addressing them, implementing his recommendations required confronting uncomfortable truths about my own role in enabling the exploitation that had destroyed my financial security. The legal documentation David Chen had prepared for pursuing civil recovery of my funds was comprehensive and professionally crafted, establishing clear evidence of unauthorized transfers and demanding immediate restitution with interest and penalties. The paperwork represented the most aggressive approach to family conflict I had ever considered, transforming a private matter of stolen money into a formal legal dispute that would create permanent documentation of my parents' criminal behavior. However, when I held the documents in my hands and contemplated actually serving them to my parents through certified mail, I found myself hesitating despite the obvious necessity of taking legal action to protect my interests and recover resources that had been stolen from me. The hesitation was not based on uncertainty about the facts or concern about the legal merits of my case, but on deeply ingrained psychological conditioning about family loyalty and cultural expectations that made aggressive self-advocacy feel like betrayal of values that had shaped my identity throughout my adult life. The internal conflict I experienced during this period revealed the sophisticated nature of the psychological manipulation my family had used to maintain access to my resources, while preventing me from taking protective action even after discovering their theft. Their accusations about cultural disloyalty and abandonment of family values had been strategically designed to exploit my emotional attachments and moral framework in ways that would discourage legal action regardless of the financial harm they had caused. David Chen had warned me that this psychological pressure was a predictable component of family financial abuse, and that victims often experienced intense guilt and self-doubt when pursuing recovery strategies that challenged family dynamics and cultural expectations about individual versus collective rights. According to his professional experience, many clients abandoned legitimate recovery efforts because they could not overcome emotional manipulation that portrayed justified self-protection as moral failure and family betrayal. His prediction proved accurate as I struggled with competing impulses to pursue justice through legal action, while simultaneously seeking compromise solutions that might preserve family relationships, without requiring full accountability from the people who had violated my trust and stolen my money. The desire to find middle ground that satisfied both my need for financial recovery and my emotional attachment to family unity led me to develop elaborate rationalizations for delaying legal action while pursuing alternative approaches that might achieve partial resolution without complete confrontation. The compromise strategy I developed involved attempting to negotiate directly with my parents for voluntary repayment of stolen funds in exchange for my agreement not to pursue legal action or involve law enforcement in addressing their financial crimes. This approach seemed more mature and culturally appropriate than immediately escalating to litigation. And it provided psychological comfort by maintaining the illusion that family relationships could be preserved through mutual respect and reasonable discussion about financial obligations. My renewed attempt at family communication began with a carefully worded letter that acknowledged the cultural and emotional factors that had influenced their decision to access my savings, while firmly establishing my expectation that the money would be returned, according to a reasonable timeline that considered their financial circumstances and business obligations. The tone was respectful but clear about the seriousness of the situation and my determination to recover resources that belonged to me regardless of their justifications or family expectations. The letter proposed a structured repayment plan that would allow them to return my savings over 18 months through monthly payments that would not create additional financial hardship while ensuring that I could proceed with major life decisions that had been postponed due to their theft of my down payment money. The proposal included modest interest payments that would compensate me for lost investment opportunities and the financial disruption their actions had created. Their response to this compromise offer revealed the extent to which they had convinced themselves that their theft was justified, and that my pursuit of repayment represented unreasonable selfishness rather than legitimate protection of my financial interests. Instead of acknowledging the reasonableness of my proposal, or expressing gratitude for my willingness to avoid legal action, they responded with increased hostility and additional accusations about my failure to prioritize family obligations over individual financial goals. The response letter accused me of attempting to destroy Miguel's business through my selfish insistence on recovering money that had been provided as family investment in a venture that would ultimately benefit everyone involved through job creation and community service. According to their perspective, my demand for repayment demonstrated fundamental misunderstanding of family dynamics and cultural values that prioritized collective success over individual accumulation of resources. Most disturbingly, their response included detailed threats about the social and professional consequences I would experience if I continued pursuing recovery of money they claimed had been freely contributed to family business interests. They suggested that community members and professional colleagues would view my actions as evidence of moral corruption and cultural betrayal that would damage my reputation and career prospects in ways that would ultimately cost me more than the amount of money I was attempting to recover. The sophisticated nature of these threats revealed my parents' understanding of my professional and social vulnerabilities, demonstrating that they had carefully analyzed my personal circumstances to identify pressure points that could be used to discourage legal action or other forms of aggressive self-advocacy. Their willingness to threaten my professional reputation and community standing indicated a level of calculated manipulation that exceeded simple financial desperation and represented deliberate emotional abuse designed to maintain their control over my resources and decisions. Despite the obvious manipulative nature of their response, I found myself reconsidering the wisdom of pursuing legal action when the potential social and professional consequences might exceed the financial benefits of recovering stolen money. The psychological pressure they had applied was effective because it exploited legitimate concerns about professional reputation and community relationships that were important components of my long-term success and personal satisfaction. The internal debate that followed consumed significant mental and emotional energy as I attempted to balance competing priorities and calculate the true costs and benefits of various approaches to resolving the financial crisis my family had created. The complexity of these considerations created paralysis that prevented decisive action while allowing additional time for my parents to strengthen their financial position and potentially hide assets that might be recoverable through legal action. David Chen's follow-up consultation during this period provided crucial perspective about the psychological dynamics I was experiencing and the strategic implications of delaying legal action while attempting to negotiate voluntary compliance from family members who had demonstrated complete disregard for my financial rights and personal autonomy. His analysis helped me recognize that my desire to find compromise solutions was being exploited by people who had no intention of accepting responsibility for their actions or providing restitution for financial harm they had caused. According to his professional experience, family financial predators typically escalated their manipulation tactics when victims began pursuing recovery strategies, using emotional blackmail and social pressure to prevent legal action that might result in consequences for their criminal behavior. The threats and accusations I had received were predictable components of this escalation, designed to create doubt about my moral position and fear about potential social consequences that were typically exaggerated or entirely fictional. His recommendation was to proceed immediately with legal action, while evidence remained fresh and recoverable assets had not been further dissipated through business expenses or asset transfers designed to prevent collection of judgment amounts. The delay I was considering would only strengthen my family's position, while weakening my ability to recover stolen funds and protect myself from additional exploitation. Most importantly, David Chen helped me understand that my attempt to preserve family relationships through compromise and accommodation was actually enabling continued abuse and preventing the healthy boundaries that would be necessary for any genuine reconciliation in the future. By accepting partial responsibility for conflict that had been created entirely through my family's criminal behavior, I was reinforcing their belief that they could exploit my emotional attachments without experiencing meaningful consequences. The insight that proved most transformative involved recognizing that my parents' threats about social and professional consequences revealed their awareness that their behavior was indefensible according to conventional moral and legal standards. People who believed their actions were justified would not need to rely on intimidation and manipulation to prevent scrutiny of their behavior. Their elaborate efforts to discourage legal action confirmed that they understood they had committed crimes and violated ethical standards that would result in negative judgment from objective observers. This realization provided the psychological clarity necessary to overcome my hesitation about pursuing aggressive recovery strategies, despite potential family and cultural conflicts. The choice was not between maintaining harmonious family relationships and pursuing selfish financial interests, but between accepting ongoing exploitation and establishing boundaries that would protect my autonomy and resources from people who had demonstrated willingness to steal from me while threatening additional harm if I sought justice for their crimes. The decision to proceed with legal action represented more than a strategy for recovering stolen money. It marked my recognition that healthy relationships required mutual respect and ethical behavior from all parties, and that accepting financial abuse to avoid confrontation was ultimately destructive for everyone involved, including family members who needed consequences to motivate behavioral change and prevent additional harm to other potential victims. The legal documents were served to my parents the following Monday morning, initiating formal civil litigation that would create official documentation of their theft, while establishing legal mechanisms for recovering stolen funds and preventing future exploitation. The process felt simultaneously liberating and terrifying, representing my first decisive action to prioritize my own financial protection over family harmony and cultural expectations about deference to parental authority. Their response to receiving legal notice exceeded even David Chen's pessimistic predictions about potential escalation of manipulation and intimidation tactics. Instead of acknowledging the seriousness of legal action and attempting to negotiate reasonable settlement arrangements, they launched a comprehensive campaign designed to isolate me from extended family members and community supporters, while portraying themselves as victims of ungrateful children who had abandoned traditional values in pursuit of material wealth. The campaign included contacting my employer with accusations about my character and professional competence, reaching out to friends and colleagues with detailed accounts of family conflicts that portrayed me as mentally unstable and motivated by greed rather than legitimate grievances about stolen money. The scope and coordination of these efforts revealed sophisticated understanding of social dynamics and professional vulnerabilities that could be exploited to create pressure for abandoning legal action. However, the aggressive nature of their response also provided additional evidence for legal proceedings, while confirming that my decision to pursue formal recovery strategies had been appropriate and necessary. People who were genuinely interested in resolving family conflicts through reasonable discussion would not respond to legal action with campaigns of character assassination and professional sabotage. The foundation had been established for legal recovery of stolen funds while implementing protective strategies that would prevent additional exploitation and provide security for rebuilding my financial foundation through more sophisticated approaches to wealth building and asset protection than I had previously considered or understood. The initiation of legal proceedings against my parents marked the beginning of a professional relationship with David Chen that extended far beyond crisis management and financial recovery. As the civil litigation progressed through initial stages of discovery and asset identification, our consultations evolved to encompass comprehensive financial education and wealth-building strategies that addressed the fundamental gaps in my understanding of money management, investment theory, and long-term financial planning. The transformation of our professional relationship from emergency consultation to strategic partnership occurred gradually, as David Chen recognized my commitment to learning and implementing sophisticated approaches to building financial security. His initial assessment had identified someone with strong foundational habits and disciplined saving behaviors who lacked exposure to advanced strategies for accelerating wealth accumulation and protecting assets from various forms of risk and exploitation. The educational process began with comprehensive analysis of my existing financial position and identification of opportunities for optimizing my approach to income generation, expense management, and investment allocation. Despite the devastating impact of my family's theft, the analysis revealed that my underlying financial habits and professional trajectory provided a solid foundation for rebuilding wealth more quickly and securely than my previous conservative strategies had enabled. David Chen's approach to financial education emphasized understanding the psychological and behavioral factors that influenced money management decisions, helping me recognize how my family background and cultural conditioning had created both strengths and limitations in my relationship with money and financial planning. The disciplined saving habits I had developed were valuable assets that could be leveraged through more sophisticated investment strategies, while my risk-averse tendencies needed recalibration to enable appropriate participation in growth-oriented investments. The first major component of my financial education involved understanding the fundamental difference between accumulating money through saving and building wealth through strategic investment and business ownership. My previous approach had focused primarily on accumulating liquid savings in low-risk accounts that provided security but minimal growth potential, limiting my ability to build significant wealth over time, despite consistent saving habits and steady income growth. David Chen introduced me to investment concepts and strategies that I had previously avoided due to lack of knowledge and fear of potential losses. The education process included detailed analysis of historical market performance, risk management techniques, and portfolio construction principles that enabled informed decision-making about investment allocation and long-term wealth-building objectives. The psychological component of investment education proved as important as the technical knowledge, because my family experiences had created deep-seated fears about financial risk and loss that prevented optimal utilization of growth-oriented investment opportunities. Understanding the mathematical relationship between risk and reward, combined with proper diversification and time horizon management, provided the confidence necessary to implement investment strategies that would accelerate wealth accumulation beyond what conventional saving could achieve. The business ownership component of my financial education represented the most transformative aspect of our expanding professional relationship. David Chen's analysis of my professional skills, industry experience, and career trajectory revealed significant opportunities for creating additional income streams through consulting services that could leverage my marketing expertise and client relationships in ways that exceeded the earning potential of traditional employment. The concept of building business equity as a wealth-building strategy had never been presented to me in actionable terms that connected to my existing professional capabilities and market opportunities. David Chen's approach to entrepreneurial development emphasized starting with services and expertise I already possessed, rather than pursuing entirely new business ventures that would require substantial capital investment and learning curves in unfamiliar industries. The consulting business development strategy we created together focused on providing marketing and business development services to small and medium-sized businesses in the technology sector where I had established professional credibility and industry connections. The approach leveraged my existing relationships and demonstrated expertise while creating opportunities for building client relationships that could generate recurring revenue and scalable business growth. The implementation of this business development strategy required overcoming psychological barriers about self-promotion and entrepreneurial risk that were rooted in the same cultural conditioning that had made me vulnerable to family financial exploitation. The process of developing business proposals, marketing materials, and client presentations forced me to articulate my professional value and expertise in ways that had been discouraged by family messages about humility and collective achievement over individual recognition. David Chen's guidance through this process extended beyond technical business development to encompass personal development and confidence building that enabled effective communication of professional capabilities to potential clients. The skills required for successful entrepreneurial activity included many of the same assertiveness and boundary-setting capabilities that were necessary for protecting myself from family financial abuse and other forms of exploitation. The legal proceedings against my parents provided an unexpected source of motivation and clarity about the importance of financial independence and self-advocacy. The process of documenting their theft and pursuing recovery through civil litigation required developing detailed understanding of financial record-keeping, asset protection, and legal rights that enhanced my overall financial literacy and protective capabilities. The discovery phase of the litigation revealed additional information about my family's financial situation that confirmed David Chen's initial assessment about the systematic nature of their financial problems and the impossibility of recovering stolen funds through voluntary compliance or negotiated settlement. The evidence gathered through legal processes demonstrated that my parents had committed similar financial crimes against other family members and business associates, establishing a pattern of behavior that extended far beyond their theft of my savings. This information transformed my understanding of the situation from an isolated incident of poor judgment during financial stress to evidence of chronic financial predation that represented ongoing danger to anyone who maintained financial relationships with my family. The recognition that I was not their only victim provided additional motivation for pursuing legal action while implementing comprehensive protective strategies to prevent future exploitation. The business development activities that David Chen had recommended began generating positive results within 3 months of implementation, providing evidence that his strategic recommendations were based on accurate assessment of market opportunities and my professional capabilities. The initial consulting contracts involved marketing strategy development for technology startups and small businesses that needed professional expertise but could not afford full-time marketing staff or established consulting firms. The success of these initial projects created referral opportunities and repeat business that validated the potential for building sustainable income streams through entrepreneurial activity. The financial returns from consulting work exceeded my hourly compensation from traditional employment, while providing greater flexibility and control over professional activities and client relationships. Most importantly, the business development experience provided practical education about negotiating contracts, managing client relationships, and building professional reputation through demonstrated results, rather than credentials or institutional affiliation. These skills proved directly transferable to other aspects of financial management and personal advocacy, creating confidence that extended beyond business activities to encompass all areas of life where negotiation and self-advocacy were required. The investment education component of our professional relationship produced measurable results as David Chen guided me through the process of building diversified investment portfolios that balanced growth potential with risk management and liquidity requirements. The approach emphasized understanding market fundamentals and economic principles, rather than following investment trends or relying on speculation about short-term market movements. The psychological benefits of understanding investment theory and implementing systematic investment strategies exceeded the financial returns because the process provided sense of control and agency over my financial future that had been absent from my previous approach to money management. Instead of simply accumulating savings and hoping for the best, I was actively participating in wealth-building activities that would compound over time to create financial security and independence. The asset protection strategies that David Chen implemented as part of comprehensive financial planning provided crucial insurance against future exploitation attempts while ensuring that business and investment activities would not create vulnerabilities that could be exploited by creditors or family members seeking to access resources I had rebuilt after recovering from their theft. These protective strategies included legal structures that separated business assets from personal assets, insurance policies that provided coverage for various forms of financial risk, and estate planning documents that ensured my wealth would be distributed according to my preferences rather than default legal arrangements that might benefit people who had harmed me financially. The comprehensive approach to financial planning and wealth building that emerged from our professional relationship represented a fundamental transformation in my understanding of money, business, and personal power. The crisis created by my family's theft had provided the catalyst for developing financial sophistication and protective strategies that would ultimately provide greater security and opportunity than I could have achieved through continuing the conservative approaches that had made me vulnerable to exploitation. The legal recovery of stolen funds remained important for principles of justice and accountability, but the educational and strategic benefits of working with David Chen proved more valuable than any amount of money that could be recovered through litigation. The knowledge, skills, and confidence I developed through our professional relationship would generate returns throughout my lifetime while protecting me from various forms of financial risk and exploitation. The foundation for transformation had been established through professional guidance that addressed both immediate crisis management and long-term wealth-building objectives. The process of rebuilding my financial foundation was providing opportunities for creating greater success and security than I had previously imagined possible, while developing protective capabilities that would prevent repetition of the vulnerability and exploitation that had initially brought me to seek professional assistance. The relationship with David Chen had evolved from emergency consultation to strategic partnership that was reshaping my understanding of what was possible through systematic application of professional financial planning and wealth-building strategies. The real transformation was just beginning, as the foundation for long-term success and security was being established through education, implementation, and consistent professional guidance. The complexity of managing simultaneous legal action against my family, while building a new consulting business and implementing sophisticated investment strategies, created psychological pressures I had not anticipated when I first committed to pursuing comprehensive financial recovery and wealth-building objectives. Each component of my evolving financial strategy required careful attention and consistent execution, while the ongoing litigation demanded emotional energy and strategic decision-making that competed for mental resources with entrepreneurial activities and professional development. The legal proceedings had entered the discovery phase, which involved extensive documentation review and sworn testimony that revealed disturbing details about my family's financial activities and the systematic nature of their exploitation of various family members and business associates. The evidence gathered through legal processes confirmed David Chen's initial assessment that my parents' theft represented chronic financial predation rather than isolated poor judgment during temporary economic stress. The deposition testimony of my parents revealed sophisticated rationalization strategies they had developed to justify their criminal behavior while avoiding acknowledgement of the harm they had caused to victims of their financial crimes. Their sworn statements included detailed explanations of family financial obligations and cultural expectations that supposedly justified unauthorized access to other people's savings accounts and investment resources. Most disturbingly, their testimony revealed that they had accessed retirement funds belonging to elderly relatives, college savings accounts established for grandchildren, and business capital provided by immigrant community members who had trusted them with financial management responsibilities. The scope of their financial crimes extended far beyond my individual situation to encompass systematic exploitation of vulnerable people who had relied on family relationships and cultural connections for financial guidance and support. This information transformed my legal action from personal financial recovery to community protection against ongoing criminal activity that threatened the economic security of multiple families and individuals. The recognition that my parents were serial financial predators provided additional motivation for pursuing legal remedies while implementing comprehensive protective strategies to prevent future exploitation of potential victims. However, the emotional impact of learning about the full extent of my family's criminal behavior created unexpected psychological challenges that interfered with my ability to focus on business development and investment activities that were crucial for rebuilding my financial foundation. The process of reviewing evidence and participating in legal proceedings required confronting painful truths about people I had loved and trusted throughout my adult life. The cognitive dissonance between my childhood memories of caring parents who had sacrificed for my educational opportunities and the current evidence of systematic criminal behavior created internal conflict that manifested in anxiety, depression, and difficulty concentrating on complex tasks that required sustained mental effort and emotional stability. David Chen's recognition of these psychological challenges led to recommendations for professional counseling that specialized in trauma recovery for victims of family financial abuse. The therapeutic process provided crucial support for managing the emotional impact of legal proceedings while maintaining professional performance and business development activities that were essential for long-term financial recovery. The counseling sessions revealed that family financial abuse often created psychological symptoms similar to other forms of domestic violence, because the betrayal involved violation of fundamental trust and exploitation of emotional attachments for criminal purposes. The therapeutic approach emphasized developing coping strategies and emotional regulation techniques that enabled productive functioning despite ongoing legal stress and family conflict. The business development activities that had begun generating positive results during previous months continued expanding as client referrals and repeat engagements provided evidence of market demand for my marketing consulting services. The success of initial projects had created opportunities for larger contracts and longer-term client relationships that offered potential for building sustainable income streams that exceeded my previous employment compensation. However, managing client relationships and delivering professional services while participating in legal proceedings and dealing with family harassment required sophisticated time management and emotional compartmentalization that challenged my organizational capabilities and stress tolerance. The competing demands created schedule conflicts and attention management problems that threatened the quality of both legal strategy and business performance. The most significant challenge involved maintaining professional confidentiality about legal proceedings, while building trust with clients who needed confidence in my stability and reliability as a service provider. The ongoing family conflict created potential reputation risks that could affect business development if prospective clients learned about litigation or family dynamics that might suggest character problems or professional instability. David Chen's guidance during this period extended beyond financial strategy to encompass comprehensive life management that addressed the interconnections between legal, business, and personal objectives. His approach emphasized creating systematic processes and support structures that enabled effective performance across multiple demanding activities while maintaining physical and mental health during extended periods of high stress. The investment portfolio construction that had begun during previous consultations required ongoing attention and periodic rebalancing as market conditions changed and new opportunities emerged. The process of learning to evaluate investment options and make informed decisions about asset allocation provided practical education about financial markets while creating additional complexity in my daily schedule and decision-making responsibilities. The psychological benefits of active investment management proved significant because the process provided a sense of control and agency over my financial future that contrasted dramatically with the helplessness I had experienced when discovering my family's theft. Instead of being a passive victim of other people's financial decisions, I was actively participating in wealth-building activities that would compound over time to create security and independence. However, the learning curve associated with investment analysis and portfolio management created additional stress when combined with legal proceedings and business development activities. The complexity of evaluating individual securities, understanding market trends, and making strategic allocation decisions required mental energy and analytical capabilities that were already stretched by competing professional and legal demands. The asset protection strategies that David Chen had recommended became increasingly important as my business income and investment returns began generating wealth that needed protection from potential creditors and family members who might attempt additional exploitation through various legal or fraudulent means. The implementation of these protective structures required additional legal consultation and administrative complexity that added another layer of management responsibility to my expanding professional activities. The legal structures designed to separate business assets from personal assets provided crucial protection while creating operational complexity that required ongoing administrative attention and professional maintenance. The process of establishing and maintaining limited liability companies, business insurance policies, and estate planning documents demanded time and resources that competed with revenue-generating activities and investment management responsibilities. The harassment campaign that my parents had initiated in response to legal proceedings escalated as the litigation progressed, and evidence of their criminal behavior became more comprehensive and legally actionable. Their efforts to damage my professional reputation and isolate me from community support expanded, to include direct interference with client relationships and attempts to sabotage business development activities. The sophistication of their sabotage efforts revealed strategic planning and coordination that exceeded simple emotional reactions to legal pressure. They had systematically researched my client relationships and professional activities to identify vulnerabilities that could be exploited through character assassination and misinformation campaigns designed to damage business prospects and create financial pressure that might force abandonment of legal action. Their sabotage activities included contacting prospective clients with false information about my professional competence and ethical standards, reaching out to industry colleagues with detailed accusations about personal character defects and family conflicts that portrayed me as mentally unstable and professionally unreliable. The scope and coordination of these efforts required significant time and resources that demonstrated their commitment to preventing accountability for their financial crimes. The impact of these sabotage efforts on business development activities was initially concerning because several prospective clients expressed hesitation about engaging services from someone involved in family legal disputes that might affect professional stability and service delivery. The need to address these concerns while maintaining appropriate confidentiality about legal proceedings created additional complexity in client development and relationship management. However, David Chen's strategic guidance about managing reputation risks and communicating with clients about personal challenges proved effective for maintaining business growth despite ongoing harassment and sabotage efforts. His approach emphasized transparency about general circumstances, while maintaining appropriate boundaries about specific legal details that were not relevant to client relationships and service delivery. The process of addressing sabotage efforts provided valuable experience in crisis communication and reputation management that enhanced my professional capabilities, while demonstrating the importance of maintaining ethical standards and honest communication during challenging circumstances. The clients who remained engaged after learning about family conflicts proved to be the most valuable relationships because they were based on demonstrated professional competence, rather than superficial impressions or incomplete information. The legal discovery process continued, revealing additional evidence of financial crimes that extended the timeline for resolution while strengthening the foundation for recovery of stolen funds and prevention of future exploitation. The complexity of documenting multiple financial crimes involving various victims and criminal schemes required extensive investigation and expert analysis that increased legal costs while improving prospects for comprehensive resolution. The evidence gathered through discovery processes confirmed that recovery of my stolen savings was only one component of a larger legal strategy that would protect multiple victims while establishing precedents for accountability that might deter similar criminal behavior by other family financial predators. The recognition that my case had broader implications for community protection provided additional motivation for pursuing comprehensive legal remedies despite personal costs and ongoing harassment. The business success that continued despite sabotage efforts provided practical evidence that professional competence and ethical behavior created resilience against character assassination and reputation attacks. The clients who maintained engagement based on demonstrated results rather than family dynamics or personal circumstances represented the foundation for sustainable business growth that would provide long-term financial security independent of legal recovery outcomes. The investment portfolio performance during this period validated David Chen's strategic recommendations, while providing measurable evidence that systematic wealth-building activities could generate returns that exceeded traditional employment compensation and savings account growth. The mathematical compounding of investment returns created motivation for continued learning and strategic implementation, despite ongoing stress from legal proceedings and family conflict. The comprehensive approach to financial recovery and wealth building that had emerged from crisis management was producing measurable results across multiple objectives while providing education and experience that would benefit my long-term financial success regardless of specific outcomes from legal action or business development activities. The foundation for transformation had been established through systematic application of professional guidance and strategic implementation, despite complex challenges and ongoing opposition from family members committed to avoiding accountability for their criminal behavior. The escalation of my family's harassment campaign reached critical intensity during the fourth month of legal proceedings, when their sabotage efforts moved beyond character assassination to direct interference with client relationships and business operations. The sophistication of their attacks revealed strategic planning that exceeded emotional retaliation and approached systematic business warfare designed to force abandonment of legal action through economic pressure and professional destruction. The most serious incident occurred during a crucial presentation to Pacific Northwest Technology Group, a consortium of small businesses seeking comprehensive marketing strategy development that represented the largest potential contract I had pursued since establishing my consulting practice. The presentation had been scheduled for 3 weeks and involved extensive preparation of customized proposals and strategic analyses that could establish my firm as a preferred vendor for ongoing services throughout their member network. 30 minutes before the scheduled presentation, I received an urgent call from the consortium's executive director informing me that they had received anonymous information raising concerns about my professional stability and ethical conduct. The caller had provided detailed allegations about family conflicts, legal disputes, and character defects that suggested I might be unsuitable for handling sensitive marketing materials and confidential business information for their member companies. The timing of this sabotage was strategically calculated to create maximum disruption, when I had no opportunity to address the allegations or provide context that might mitigate their impact on the business relationship. The anonymous caller had specifically requested that the information remain confidential while suggesting that the consortium conduct additional background research before proceeding with any contractual arrangements. The executive director's tone was professional but cautious, reflecting genuine concern about potential risks while maintaining courtesy towards someone who had invested significant time in proposal development and relationship building. His questions were reasonable and appropriate for protecting his organization's interests, but they required responses that balanced honesty about personal circumstances with protection of legal strategy and client confidentiality. My response to this crisis drew on communication strategies that David Chen had recommended for managing reputation risks during ongoing legal proceedings. The approach emphasized acknowledgement of general circumstances without providing specific details that could compromise legal strategy or violate confidentiality requirements related to family financial crimes and recovery litigation. I explained that I was involved in civil litigation related to unauthorized access to personal financial accounts by family members, and that the legal action was progressing through normal discovery processes with support from qualified legal counsel. The presentation emphasized my commitment to maintaining professional standards and service delivery despite personal challenges, while providing references from current clients who could verify my competence and reliability. The executive director's response was more positive than I had anticipated, reflecting appreciation for honest communication and professional handling of difficult circumstances. His experience with business operations had provided understanding that personal challenges were common among entrepreneurs and service providers, and that professional competence could be maintained despite family conflicts or legal proceedings. However, he requested a brief postponement of the presentation to allow time for reference verification and additional consideration of the anonymous allegations. The delay was reasonable from his perspective, but created anxiety about whether the opportunity would survive the additional scrutiny and time for opposition research that my family might conduct during the postponement period. The successful navigation of this crisis provided valuable experience in reputation management and transparent communication that enhanced my confidence for handling similar challenges in future business development activities. The incident demonstrated that honest professional behavior could overcome character assassination when supported by documented competence and ethical conduct in client relationships. The investigation of the anonymous call revealed sophisticated research and preparation that confirmed my family's commitment to business sabotage as a strategy for preventing legal accountability. They had obtained detailed information about my client relationships, proposal schedules, and business development activities through surveillance and social media monitoring that exceeded casual harassment and approached organized harassment campaigns. The legal implications of their business interference provided additional evidence for civil litigation, while creating grounds for seeking restraining orders and other legal protections against ongoing harassment and sabotage activities. The documentation of systematic business interference strengthened my position for recovering damages beyond stolen funds, to include compensation for business losses and professional harm caused by their criminal behavior. The investment portfolio management activities that had begun during previous months required ongoing attention during this period of intensified harassment, creating additional complexity in time management and stress tolerance when business operations were already challenged by sabotage efforts and reputation management requirements. The process of monitoring market conditions and making strategic allocation decisions provided psychological benefits through sense of control and productive activity despite external pressures. The portfolio performance during this period validated David Chen's investment strategies, while providing measurable evidence that systematic wealth building could continue despite personal crises and family conflicts. The mathematical compounding of investment returns created motivation for maintaining long-term perspective and strategic focus when immediate circumstances were challenging and stressful. However, the psychological pressure of managing multiple complex activities while defending against systematic harassment created physical symptoms of chronic stress that threatened my ability to maintain professional performance and sound decision-making. The necessity of seeking additional professional support for stress management and emotional regulation became apparent when anxiety and sleep disruption began affecting client service quality and business judgment. David Chen's recommendations for comprehensive wellness support included medical consultation for stress-related health issues, expanded counseling services for trauma recovery, and lifestyle modifications that would support sustained high performance during extended periods of professional and legal challenges. His approach emphasized treating stress management as essential business infrastructure rather than optional personal care that could be delayed until external circumstances improved. The medical consultation revealed physical indicators of chronic stress that required immediate intervention to prevent more serious health consequences that could jeopardize both personal well-being and professional capabilities. The physician's recommendations included stress reduction techniques, exercise programs, and dietary modifications that would support physical resilience and mental clarity during demanding circumstances. The expanded counseling services provided crucial support for processing the emotional impact of discovering the full extent of my family's criminal behavior while maintaining professional focus and business development activities. The therapeutic approach emphasized developing cognitive frameworks and emotional regulation strategies that enabled productive functioning despite ongoing trauma recovery and family conflict. The lifestyle modifications required restructuring daily routines and personal habits to prioritize activities that supported stress recovery and emotional stability. The process of implementing these changes created additional complexity in schedule management, but proved essential for maintaining professional competence and personal well-being during extended crisis periods. The business development activities continued despite harassment and sabotage efforts, providing evidence that professional competence and ethical conduct could overcome character assassination when supported by documented results and transparent communication about personal challenges. The clients who remained engaged during difficult periods proved to be the most valuable relationships because they were based on demonstrated professional value, rather than superficial impressions or incomplete information. The Pacific Northwest Technology Group presentation was eventually rescheduled for 2 weeks later, providing time for reference verification and additional preparation to address concerns raised by the anonymous sabotage attempt. The successful completion of this presentation would prove crucial for establishing credibility with larger client organizations and demonstrating resilience under pressure that differentiated my services from competitors who might fold under similar challenges. The preparation for the rescheduled presentation required addressing potential concerns about professional stability, while showcasing strategic capabilities and implementation expertise that would provide value regardless of personal circumstances. The approach emphasized documented results from previous projects and systematic methodologies that would ensure consistent service delivery despite external pressures or personal challenges. The legal proceedings entered a critical phase during this period when asset discovery revealed additional bank accounts and investment holdings that my parents had used to hide funds stolen from multiple victims. The complexity of tracing these assets required forensic accounting expertise and expanded legal resources that increased costs while improving prospects for comprehensive recovery and accountability. The forensic accounting analysis confirmed that my parents had operated a sophisticated financial fraud scheme that involved multiple victims and criminal techniques for hiding stolen assets from legal discovery processes. The evidence supported expanded legal action that would protect additional victims while seeking damages that exceeded simple recovery of stolen funds to include punitive measures and professional consequences for their criminal behavior. The expanded legal strategy required additional time and resources, but provided opportunities for achieving comprehensive resolution that would prevent future exploitation of potential victims, while establishing legal precedents for accountability in family financial abuse cases. The recognition that my case had broader implications for community protection provided additional motivation for pursuing complete legal remedies, despite personal costs and ongoing harassment. The client relationships that survived harassment and sabotage efforts proved more valuable than relationships that might have been established under normal circumstances, because they were based on tested professional competence and ethical conduct under pressure. The process of defending against character assassination and business interference provided practical experience in crisis management and reputation protection that enhanced my overall professional capabilities. The investment returns that continued accumulating during this period provided tangible evidence that wealth-building activities could proceed effectively despite personal crises and family conflicts, when supported by professional guidance and systematic implementation strategies. The mathematical growth of investment portfolios created confidence in long-term financial security, independent of legal recovery outcomes or business development success. The comprehensive approach to crisis management that had emerged through professional guidance was producing positive results across multiple objectives, while providing experience and capabilities that would benefit long-term success regardless of specific outcomes from current challenges. The foundation for transformation had been strengthened through successful navigation of escalating opposition and strategic sabotage attempts. The upcoming rescheduled presentation with Pacific Northwest Technology Group represented both validation of professional resilience and opportunity for achieving business breakthrough that would establish credibility for larger client relationships and sustainable income growth. The preparation for this crucial presentation would demonstrate whether the crisis management strategies and professional development activities had created sufficient foundation for achieving extraordinary success despite extraordinary challenges. The convergence of multiple critical pressures during the 5th month of legal proceedings created circumstances that tested every aspect of the crisis management and professional development strategies I had implemented under David Chen's guidance. The legal discovery process had revealed evidence of financial crimes involving 17 different victims across 3 decades, transforming my individual recovery case into a complex investigation of systematic fraud that attracted attention from federal investigators and community advocacy organizations. The forensic accounting analysis commissioned through legal proceedings had uncovered sophisticated money laundering operations that my parents had used to hide stolen assets through multiple shell companies, offshore accounts, and fraudulent business transactions. The complexity of their criminal enterprise exceeded anything local law enforcement had previously encountered in family financial abuse cases, requiring coordination with federal agencies that possessed specialized expertise in complex financial fraud investigations. The federal investigation created both opportunities and complications for my individual recovery efforts. The expanded scope of the investigation provided access to resources and expertise that improved prospects for comprehensive asset recovery, while establishing criminal accountability that would prevent future exploitation of potential victims. However, the federal involvement also introduced timeline delays and confidentiality requirements that limited my ability to discuss case developments with clients and professional contacts who needed information about potential impacts on business relationships. The business implications of federal investigation visibility became apparent when several prospective clients postponed contract discussions pending resolution of legal proceedings that might affect my availability for project completion or create reputation risks for their organizations. The cautious responses were professionally reasonable but created immediate cash flow challenges when recurring client relationships had not yet developed sufficient stability to compensate for lost new business opportunities. The Pacific Northwest Technology Group presentation, which had been rescheduled following the anonymous sabotage attempt, was postponed indefinitely when their legal counsel advised against engaging contractors involved in federal investigations until criminal proceedings reached resolution. The decision was communicated professionally and included assurance that contract discussions would resume when legal circumstances permitted, but the delay eliminated the largest potential revenue opportunity I had developed since establishing my consulting practice. The loss of major contract opportunities created financial pressure that threatened my ability to maintain the comprehensive legal representation and forensic accounting services that were essential for achieving complete recovery and accountability in the complex criminal case. The legal costs associated with federal coordination and expanded asset discovery exceeded my initial budget projections, while the business income needed to support these expenses was declining due to client hesitation about engaging services during ongoing legal proceedings. David Chen's response to these financial pressures demonstrated the value of comprehensive strategic planning that anticipated multiple scenarios and prepared alternative approaches for maintaining progress toward long-term objectives despite short-term setbacks and unexpected complications. His analysis of the situation emphasized the temporary nature of current challenges while identifying opportunities for accelerating business development through market segments that were less sensitive to legal proceedings and federal investigations. The alternative business development strategy focused on smaller clients and shorter-term projects that could provide immediate cash flow while building portfolio credentials that would support larger contract opportunities when legal circumstances stabilized. The approach emphasized demonstrating competence and reliability through completion of modest engagements rather than pursuing major contracts that required extensive due diligence and risk assessment processes. The implementation of this modified business strategy required adjusting expectations about revenue growth and client relationship development while maintaining focus on long-term wealth-building objectives that extended beyond immediate business income. The experience provided valuable lessons about business resilience and market adaptation that would benefit future entrepreneurial activities, regardless of specific outcomes from current legal and financial challenges. The investment portfolio management activities that had begun during previous months continued generating positive returns, despite market volatility and personal circumstances that limited attention to daily monitoring and strategic adjustments. The systematic approach to investment allocation that David Chen had recommended proved resilient when immediate circumstances prevented active portfolio management, demonstrating the value of proper diversification and long-term strategic focus over short-term tactical adjustments. The mathematical compounding of investment returns provided psychological comfort during periods when business income was declining and legal costs were increasing. The steady growth of investment accounts created confidence in long-term financial security while providing tangible evidence that wealth-building activities could continue effectively, despite temporary setbacks in other areas of financial planning and professional development. The legal proceedings reached a critical juncture when my parents' attorneys proposed settlement negotiations that would provide partial restitution in exchange for dropping criminal referrals and agreeing to confidentiality agreements that would prevent public disclosure of their financial crimes. The settlement offer represented approximately 60% of stolen funds plus modest interest compensation but required accepting partial losses while enabling my parents to avoid criminal prosecution and continue operating businesses that provided access to potential future victims. The settlement proposal created complex decision-making requirements that balanced immediate financial recovery against broader objectives related to justice, community protection, and establishing accountability for family financial crimes. David Chen's analysis of the settlement terms identified both advantages and disadvantages that required careful consideration of multiple factors, including legal costs, business impact, and personal objectives for achieving closure and moving forward with life and career development. The advantages of settlement included immediate partial recovery of stolen funds, elimination of ongoing legal costs and time commitments, and resolution of federal investigation status that was creating complications for business development and client relationship management. The financial benefits of settlement would provide capital for expanding business operations while ending the emotional stress and time demands associated with extended litigation and criminal proceedings. However, the disadvantages of settlement included accepting permanent financial losses, enabling continued criminal behavior by people who had demonstrated systematic predation of vulnerable victims, and abandoning community protection objectives that had motivated continued legal action despite personal costs and business complications. The settlement terms would also require confidentiality agreements that prevented sharing information about financial abuse patterns that might help other families recognize and avoid similar exploitation. The decision-making process regarding settlement terms provided opportunity for applying decision-making frameworks and strategic analysis techniques that David Chen had introduced during our professional relationship. The approach emphasized systematic evaluation of options based on quantitative analysis of costs and benefits, while considering qualitative factors related to personal values and long-term life objectives. The federal investigators expressed strong interest in continuing criminal proceedings regardless of civil settlement decisions, indicating that criminal accountability might proceed independent of my individual recovery litigation. This information influenced settlement analysis by suggesting that community protection objectives might be achieved through criminal prosecution even if civil settlement provided immediate financial recovery and business stability. The business recovery activities that continued during this period proved more successful than anticipated, when several smaller clients provided positive referrals that generated new project opportunities with organizations that were less concerned about ongoing legal proceedings. The successful completion of modest projects created portfolio examples and client testimonials that supported future business development, while providing immediate cash flow that reduced financial pressure and improved decision-making flexibility regarding settlement negotiations. The client relationships that developed during this challenging period proved particularly valuable because they were based on demonstrated professional competence during difficult circumstances rather than ideal conditions that might not reflect actual service delivery capabilities. The experience of managing client relationships while dealing with legal proceedings provided practical education in professional communication and boundary management that enhanced overall business capabilities. The investment education that continued through regular consultations with David Chen proved essential for maintaining long-term perspective and strategic focus when immediate circumstances created pressure for short-term decisions that might compromise future opportunities. The process of learning advanced investment strategies and portfolio management techniques provided intellectual engagement that balanced the stress of legal proceedings, while building capabilities that would support long-term wealth accumulation regardless of current challenges. The psychological support services that had been recommended for managing stress and trauma recovery proved crucial for maintaining professional performance and sound judgment when multiple pressures were creating physical and emotional symptoms that threatened decision-making capabilities and business relationships. The therapeutic approach emphasized developing resilience and emotional regulation techniques that enabled sustained high performance during extended crisis periods. The wellness strategies that had been implemented for managing chronic stress became increasingly important when the convergence of legal, business, and personal pressures created physical symptoms that threatened both immediate health and long-term professional capabilities. The systematic approach to stress management through exercise, nutrition, sleep optimization, and relaxation techniques provided foundation for maintaining performance when external circumstances were challenging and unpredictable. The comprehensive crisis management approach that had evolved through professional guidance was being tested under maximum pressure conditions that revealed both strengths and limitations in the strategies and support systems that had been developed. The experience provided valuable information about resilience capabilities and resource requirements for navigating extraordinary challenges while maintaining progress toward long-term objectives. The upcoming decision about settlement negotiations would determine whether the legal component of recovery efforts would conclude through negotiated resolution or continue through extended criminal proceedings that might provide greater accountability but would require sustained commitment of time, energy, and financial resources during continued business development and wealth-building activities. The foundation for transformation that had been established through systematic crisis management and professional development was proving resilient under maximum stress conditions while providing confidence that long-term success and security could be achieved regardless of specific outcomes from current legal and business challenges. The experience of managing multiple complex pressures simultaneously was building capabilities and perspective that would benefit future opportunities and challenges throughout my professional and personal development. The telephone call that would fundamentally alter my understanding of my family's criminal enterprise arrived at 7:43 on a Thursday morning, interrupting my preparation for the rescheduled Pacific Northwest Technology Group presentation that represented the most significant business opportunity I had developed since establishing my consulting practice. The caller identified himself as Detective Marcus Rivera from the Portland Police Bureau's Financial Crimes Unit, requesting an immediate meeting to discuss evidence that had emerged during their investigation of complaints filed against my parents by multiple victims of their financial fraud scheme. Detective Rivera's professional demeanor conveyed the gravity of information he needed to share while maintaining appropriate confidentiality about ongoing criminal investigations that involved other victims and evidence collection activities. His preliminary questions confirmed my identity as a complainant in civil litigation against my parents while establishing that I might possess additional information relevant to criminal charges being considered by the District Attorney's Office for prosecution of systematic financial fraud. The revelation that law enforcement had initiated criminal investigation independent of my civil recovery litigation represented a fundamental shift in the scope and implications of legal action against my family. The detective explained that my parents had been under surveillance for several weeks based on complaints from elderly victims who had lost retirement savings to investment schemes operated through shell companies controlled by my parents and Miguel. The criminal investigation had revealed that my family's financial crimes extended beyond individual theft to encompass organized fraud operations that targeted vulnerable community members through cultural connections and trust relationships. The sophistication of their operations included multiple business entities, fraudulent documentation, and coordination with other individuals who provided technical support for complex financial manipulation and asset concealment activities. Detective Rivera requested my immediate presence at police headquarters to review evidence that had been collected through search warrants executed at my parents' residence and business locations. The evidence included financial records, computer files, and communication documentation that revealed the systematic nature of their criminal activities and the specific methods they had used to access and steal my savings, along with resources belonging to other victims. The drive to police headquarters provided time for processing the implications of criminal investigation, while preparing mentally for confronting evidence that would likely confirm the worst possibilities about my family's behavior and character. The transition from civil litigation focused on financial recovery to criminal investigation addressing organized fraud represented a complete transformation of my understanding of the situation and my family's criminal activities. The police facility's interview room was designed for serious criminal matters, with recording equipment and professional protocols that emphasized the legal significance of information being shared and documented. Detective Rivera was joined by financial crimes analyst Sarah Chen, whose expertise in forensic accounting and fraud investigation provided technical analysis of complex financial schemes and asset tracing activities. The evidence presentation began with organizational charts that mapped the structure of my family's criminal enterprise, revealing multiple business entities, bank accounts, and individual participants that formed a sophisticated network for conducting financial fraud and concealing stolen assets. The scope of their operations exceeded anything I had imagined when I first discovered the theft of my personal savings. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.